Ben, I used to be a lecturer. I used to engage with lecturers, right? I know how they set papers. When they set papers, they have enough easy marks throughout the question paper for you to pass.
So exams, actually, the preparation of exams actually start way before the exam. Like, because the things that you're saying right now, that is actually a build-up. And sometimes I think students just don't see it that way. When the exam season starts, isn't now, that's when they start to be like, I'm actually preparing for exams. So how does somebody start preparing for exams way before? Let's say the year is starting out.
So Ben, usually when you're preparing those exams, you've got two situations. You've got one where you're in trouble, you didn't do the right things. There's a strategy for that. Then there's one where, hopefully the exams haven't started. You've still got like 6 weeks. Then the right way. So let's start with the right way. The right way is, okay, fine. I've still got plenty of time. The semester just started, right? And that's actually the first time when you should start preparing for exams. You start looking at all my modules. I'm going to write this at this date. I'm going to write this at this date. Then you start saying, okay, fine. These are the topics. Now, it's very important that you analyze your modules because they are all, some of the more senior you get in university, the more you borrow stuff from other years as well. So as you learn, you need to incorporate and understand your weaknesses, right? Oh. So for me, preparing for exams, you need to be honest, number one. Yeah. That's the first thing, honesty. This is difficult because if you're not going to be honest, then the exercise doesn't work, right? So the first thing is you look at all the modules. Preferably at this stage, you've done all the right things, right? So we're starting with case one. Case one is that you've done all the right things. That is, you've gone to classes, you've post-read immediately after 24 hours. You've done your tutorials, you've applied the Monday rule, so every week you're up to date. Sure. Now you're going to prepare for your exams, right? Because your exams are coming up, right? What do you do? So the first thing you'll do, you look at all your modules, right? For all your courses and what they taught you in that semester. And then you just need to be very honest with yourself, rate yourself. I used to rate myself from a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being, I completely do not know this at all, to 10 being like, even if I could write this tomorrow, I'd get an A. Sure. Right. Then that assessment is very important because now you need to be very honest with yourself and say, do I actually know this? If you don't know what it is, if a friend walks up and says, hey, deferred tax, and you've never heard that term ever before, then it's quite important to go back and say, I don't know this. Some people will be like, but Xhanti, it's difficult for me. How do I know that I'm not lying to myself? You know what you can do, Ben, to know that you're not lying to yourself? Do an exam from last year immediately after classes happen, right? If you do last year's exam, it's covering all the topics, right? Yeah. That are going to be in the exam. So that will be a good benchmark to say, where am I standing? So once you do that exam, you'll see that either I'm going in the right direction if you pass, or I'm seeing weather mark or weather forecasts here in terms of marks. Then I know that I need to do a lot of work here. I need to do a lot. So do that. So if you're a person who struggles to do self-introspection, like most people, and you kind of scared that I'll lie to yourself, the best way is to actually do last year's paper. Do it immediately after classes. Don't wait and say, no, I need to study first before I do. No, literally do it. Then that will tell you where you're weak. Then once you've done the assessment to say, okay, I'm weak in this type of setting. So for example, if it's accounting, you'll look at tax and say, you know what, I don't know individuals. I don't know taxes for individuals. Sure. I'm so weak there. Then you need to spend time on weak areas. Now, this is important. A lot of the time, our brains love comfort. And it's one of the things that I mentioned. You need to be comfortable to be uncomfortable, right? So tell yourself, right, that no matter what happens here, I'm going to do the uncomfortable. The uncomfortable means working on your weak areas. And the problem is we are all intellects. When you go to varsity, most of us, if not all of us, we are intellectuals. You don't like it to see that you don't know things. it damages your self-esteem and your confidence. But that's the type of sort of realization that you need to come to for you to be able to be in a position to do well in your exams. So embrace failure, embrace not knowing things, but do that way in advance. That's why this 7-step process is important. That initial process of rating all your courses is important. Once you've done that, then you will focus on fixing up those weak areas.
Sure.
This could mean going back to study, doing questions, consulting, whatever it takes for you to move from having a rating of 1 to maybe a rating of 6 or 7, if preferably even 8, where you're like, okay, I'm good. So you need to do that for all your modules. And what that inevitably does, what people don't realize, it builds confidence. Because a lot of the time, a lot of students might be listening to us today, Ben, and they'll be like, shucks, I'm writing in 2 weeks' time. They're anxious. But literally, when you break it down, what's making them anxious? It's the things you don't know. So once you've dealt with the things you don't know, the anxiety will inevitably go down. The pressure will go down. You'll feel much more confident and you'll do well. So that's important, right? So have a focused strategy when learning. Don't learn for the sake of learning to cover concept, cover weak areas. And then obviously, once you've done with your weak areas, then you'll go to your stronger points. And the stronger points are maybe just to move you from a 60%, for example, to a 70 or 80. Because when you've covered everything, then you can do well. Yeah.
So the other case, because you said that there's 2 cases. There's this case where you have done everything right. Then there is that case whereby, you didn't do things right. Let's delve on that one.
Yes. So that one, again, you need to be honest there as well, right? Honesty is the best policy, so you'll be like, okay, there's 2 weeks or 3 weeks left, whatever. And you realize that, shucks, I haven't attended classes. I haven't done anything, right? So in that situation, right, you need to enter survival mode. This is about survival. Forget about distinctions and things like that. Those are bonuses. You need to enter into survival mode. So like if I'm stranded on an island, right, and I don't have food, I will make sure that I get the bare necessities, right? Food, water, right? That's essentially what you need to do as well in the second stage. Like, okay, let's break down the module. So do the exact same thing like the first person would have done. Look at all your modules, right? Then look, where can I find links to things that I would have done maybe in priors or previous sections? Then you can start mapping those ones as potential areas that you can do sort of towards the exam. Then, now you need to be smart about it. Your preparation needs to be question-driven, right? So what does this mean? You need to embrace doing exams fully as much as possible. Look at a lot of question papers, do them fully. And as you do those question papers, understand how they are getting to these different things. Now, a question paper is so beautiful in the sense that it's covering the integration and all the modules together. And now what that does, it focuses you to learn a lot of things in a short space of time. So you need to do questions. But then there's the thing that many people try to memorize questions. And that's not the way to go in this sort of scenario. The way to go is to do one question, then embrace that question, understand why the people were doing these things the way they were for that one question. Hopefully it's an integrated question covering most, if not all of the topics. Then from there, you can work your way down to say, from this, I've realized they usually ask it like this. You're not spotting, don't get me wrong. We're not saying we're spotting here. We're just trying to find trends. We're trying to find ways in which things are just commonly asked. And that actually helps you focus now, because now when you go back to the learning material, you will look for that specific information that you saw in the question paper. So do that. Make friends with the lecturers and the tutors. Sometimes they can spill things and tell you, okay, this will be things. Remember, these people are human beings. Obviously, most of them, they won't tell you what's going on. But if I'm a regular, if I know that I'm in trouble, why am I locking myself in my room every day? I need to be studying on campus next to lecturers asking them every day what's going on. Why? I don't have time to understand this on my own. So don't waste time trying to understand things, because the time is not there. So if things don't make sense within 10 or 15 minutes, quickly go to the tutor or the lecturer. What are they doing here? And be comfortable to ask those dumb questions. That will also boost your confidence, by the way, because when you start realizing, fine, when you do the first 3 papers, you're probably not going to do well. By the time you get to the 4th paper, hopefully by then, you'll have started seeing, okay, I see where they're going with this. Then that will build the necessary confidence for you to be able to survive in the exam, right? So that's what I would advise for the other. Hopefully, you don't end up there too many times. And then from there, and then there's also the issue of, do I defer? Sometimes I remember when I was still a student, like, should I defer the exam, especially if you're in case 2? And then, so these are just the real situations. So from my perspective, the choice of deferring exam, right, is very, very important, right? If you believe that you are behind because of, sometimes life happens.
Yeah.
And life does happen. You could lose a family member, or things that just force you not to be. But then historically, you've done well in this module. A deferred exam makes sense in that sense, because you need time to prepare, right? But if you're someone who doesn't know what's going on at all, I strongly not recommend deferred exam on the basis that, follow this survival kit approach first. Do the test, because if you don't do well in that test, there's still the option, to do the supplementary and to do other things. Whereas if you do the deferred, when I was still there, it limits you. And deferred exams are naturally harder than the actual, initial paper. So if you don't know what's going on and now you want to take it to the next level by doing it, there's no point in doing that. There's no point in doing that. So yeah, so that's how I would look at it.
Yeah. On the issue of the lectures, consulting in particular. I remember one thing that I used to do when I was still in undergrad. I used to have this mind game. So I'd go to consult, but what I would do I would actually look at their emphasis and what they say, and stuff like that. So I'll leave there knowing exactly what is important, because like you said, lecturers are people. And so if you ask about certain questions, they really emphasize, they're like, yeah, this is important. You need to know this and everything like that. So I used to play that mind game and look at them on certain questions. Certain questions, they wouldn't be that enthusiastic. Of course, they will help you, but they wouldn't be that enthusiastic. But on questions that are very examinable, maybe they know that this question is very much important and might come, they really they take their time and everything. So I would know that, why are you spending so much time on this definition? Clearly, this is something that I should know as well. I'm sure you have seen that as well.
Yes, I've seen that a lot, as you've mentioned, they are human beings, they are human beings. And really, as human beings, we see you, people will see you, and then you're out there putting pressure and you're like, what are you doing? Why are you focusing on this? You should be focusing on this other topic. So that's why it's firstly important to consult during the week when the module is being taught, right? Because at that stage, the lecturers are probably the most enthusiastic they will ever be. They know what the paper is going to look like. At that stage, they understand why they are lecturing this thing the way they are. If you ask them 6 weeks down the line, they've forgotten. So there's a benefit of obtaining knowledge from someone while it's still fresh. Remember, they understand why they lectured in that certain way and why they were emphasizing on those things. But unfortunately, most of us, we want to go and see them, a week before or 2 weeks before. First of all, they've forgotten what was important. So they end up, and also remember, there's a lot of pressure. Everyone is going at that time. So their defenses are also up at that stage, because now they're like, you trying to fish for information. So they're not going to really tell what's going on. Whereas if you go there and you go there whilst the information is still fresh and you're literally like the only one consulting, because no one consults most of the time in the same week when the information, they're still trying to catch up. That's where you get the real information of what's going on, because they'll then guide you. But in any case, absolutely correct, Ben, regardless of whether you are within the normal learning time frame or you 2 weeks or a week before your exam, it's important to spend time with your lecturers. You know, like if you're struggling in a module, there's no point in you locking yourself up in a room and saying that you learn. You'd rather do that in the evenings. Go to campus during the day, find a tutorial room, do your questions there, so that every time you get stuck, you can go and literally barge in and say, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this?
Sure.
So, and then that's when you get the real information, and they do give that information, you know.
Yeah.
So ask, consult, very important. Yeah.
I want us to talk about, now we're in the exam, in-exam techniques, such as how to deal with the question paper, how to start the question paper, because sometimes I see students just starting with question 1, because that's how they're used to answering the paper. And, you know, the strategies now in the exam hall. So now, here's the exam. The date is out, and now I go I go to the exam venue. I get inside, I sit. They give me the papers. There are people invigilating and everything like that. Let's talk about the strategies in the exam hall now.
I mean, they differ for everyone, right? So I think before you write that paper, you need to be confident, right? And confidence is obtained in various ways, you know. Others, you know, they do a prayer, you know, before you do the paper, you know, whatever it takes for you to be in a right space of mind for you to be ready to write that paper, do it. Before you dive into basically, you know, answering or determining, read the question paper, you know, just browse through it. Make sure, you know, do I have all the pages that's supposed to be here? You know, do I understand all the questions, right? So have a browse through initially of that paper, right? Which is important. And really that's going to communicate a lot of things to you. Number one, it's going to tell a story of whether do you know what's going on or you don't. If there's a topic where you're like, okay, you see here, you know, I probably need the assistance of maybe my ancestors here, or just because I did not, I did not touch this topic. Mark it. Don't be shy to mark it, to say, okay, this question is designed for me not to do well, so I need to mark it in a certain color. Then go to like, man, they're asking this thing, and I saw it in another paper. Mark that one as well in a different sort of highlighting. So do an assessment and get an overall picture of what's happening. What can I do? What can't I do? Right? Then once you've made up that decision, right, then allocate time to those questions. Now, this is very important, very, very important, because this talks to some of the students who go to the exam room and they're like, I didn't finish my paper, you know, I feel so bad. Why didn't I finish? Reason being, you need to time exactly how long you need to take for each question. So spend that time. You'll find that people already are starting to write. Don't be scared about that. What I used to do, because at CTA or third year, we used to have this thing called reading time, right? Well, reading time is basically for you to identify the triggers. And I guess it's the same for most modules. They've got reading time, right? Most students, they want to start to write during reading time, right? Don't do that. Don't fall into that trap, right? Even if reading time is over and you haven't appreciated what's happening in that question, make sure that you take those extra minutes to appreciate. Let me tell you something. This once happened to me, real life example, Ben.
Sure.
Writing a management accounting paper, right? For some odd reason, you know, I just wasn't focused in the paper. The reading time is over and literally I'm not done reading. I literally have like maybe 40% of the paper still to read in depth, and reading time is over. Then the people next to me are putting pen to paper. What did I say to myself? I said, okay, Xhanti, you know, we probably didn't use the reading time the best way we could. probably because I was a bit flustered. And, to be flustered, it's easy to be flustered in exam. Like things like arriving late to an
Sure.
exam,
Yeah.
exam venue, not getting the right stationaries. So pack those things, deal with the administration of a paper before you sleep in the day before, because those things can easily mess you up on the day of the exam. Then you eventually get flustered over things you actually know. So that's my advice. Sort out your exam administration the night before you sleep, your calculators, pens, whatever you need. Then you won't be flustered. Unfortunately, that didn't happen with me, got there late, flustered, what's happening? Now, I actually decided then that I would continue reading, even though my colleagues were starting to write. Now, this ate into probably a good 10 minutes into my writing time. Let me tell you something. I was able to finish that paper. Why? Because I understood exactly what was required of me. Before you write something, you need to understand what is exactly required of you. To a point whereby I even got an A for that paper. And there were papers where I didn't do that. I didn't get an A. So it's very important when I say this to you is that do not neglect reading time. Reading time is crucial. Understand what you are doing before you write. Because once you understand something, it's very easy to then answer and do so quickly. But imagine if you're starting to write and you don't know what they are actually asking for you. You're going to stop and have to read and reread again. And that's what wastes time in an exam room. There is no time for you to be reading and reading and reading. You need to get the concept. So if you need to read the paper twice, do that so that you appreciate what's going on. But obviously, don't spend too much time. It's a balancing act, with the reading time. You can't spend double the reading time. But what I'm saying is that don't be scared to go a bit over when it comes to reading time, especially if it means understanding something more. Then once you've done your reading time and you are happy in terms of what is actually required of me, right? Read the questions. Read the questions. So many people will be like, let me start with question 1 and I'll only read what's... No, read the question. The questions are there to guide you as to can I answer this or not. By reading the questions, you get to understand. Actually, question 2 is something that I saw 2 days ago. I understand this. Let me start with this one. Then question 3 is something that I haven't seen before. I'm a bit skeptical about it. Then this one. Then you might see question 1 is the big question. It's the one with the most marks. And here I'm indifferent. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. Then what do? Do you start with the big question? Do you start with the small question? Do you start with the one you know? And what I'm saying here, it all depends. But what's important is that you need to stick to your time allocation. So we talked about reading time, number 1 being crucial. Then secondly, it's reading all your questions and actually getting to understand what do I know, what don't I know. Then the next step is to actually allocate time to do the questions. Now, people might be scared to be like, but people are already writing. No, do not worry. That's an extra 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes is worth it. Literally go in. And obviously, the more practice you do in your tutorials, the quicker you become even on the test. So this is not something that you must do for the first time in the test. You need to practice this in your tutorials. Then over time, you'll start getting ways to do it quicker, right? So then, question 1 is for 30 marks, I need to spend 45 minutes. This one is for 50 marks, I need to spend 75 minutes. This one is for 20 marks, I need to spend 30 minutes. Once you've realized that, then you answer the questions. Now, this is important, Ben, which is the third step. You need to be disciplined as you answer questions. Within, you see, for me, I was even more strict that there's question 3, right? That's 30 marks. Within question 3, there are sub-questions. Sure. This one for 5 marks, this one for 10 marks, this one. I put time limits on that as well. That's how strict I was. Because for me, time was a problem. If time is a problem for you, this is the best way to do it. Be strict on yourself. Put time allocations within that specific question. So you know that I'm going to do section A of question 3, which is for 5 marks for 7 minutes, this one for 10 minutes, this one for this one. This is very important. Then what's important is discipline. Once you've set the time to say, I must spend 7 minutes, once that 7 minutes is over, move on. Now, this is where it becomes a bit confusing because the brain is telling you, you know the answer to this. Keep writing, keep writing. Trust me when I say that that is not the right way to do it. You know, Ben, I used to be a lecturer. I used to engage with lecturers, right? I know how they set papers. When they set papers, they have enough easy marks throughout the question paper for you to pass, especially if you're a person who did your work and you studied. The biggest problem that faces people is that they listen to that voice in the exam that tells them, keep writing, you know the answer. That voice, don't listen to that voice. If 7 minutes is over, move on.
Yeah.
Move on. Reason being, Ben, you've already scored all your easy marks for that question. All of the questions, they are designed in such a way that they are those basic marks which are there for everyone. Now, the problem is if you don't do your paper or if you don't do your question, you've missed out on all the other easy marks and other questions. Now, that's why you don't pass. And sometimes, you know, Ben, there were times where I've passed exams and I didn't know what was going on in that paper, simply because I wrote all the questions. You know, people don't realize this. You can pass exams and still not know what's going on in the paper. You know, there used to be subjects like auditing. I remember I once wrote an auditing exam in 30. I did not know what was going on in that paper, right? But I was disciplined enough to understand the basics.
Sure.
And to understand that I need to write all the questions. But by the way, that question, that specific paper I'm referring to had a low pass mark. It had about a 5% pass mark because it was designed to be hard. But what you must understand, all of these lecturers, even the ones that are just trying to catch you out, and they are there, those lecturers, they are there, those ones who want to catch you out. If you've done all the questions, there is enough easy marks for you to make it. There is typically enough easy marks for you to make it. So I ended up not knowing what was going on and I passed. People thought, you know, my friends thought I was smart. How did you pass this paper? I was like, guys, you know, I'm like you. I don't know what's going on. But I was disciplined enough to answer all the questions and get all my easy marks. So that's important, Ben. You know, if anyone who's listening to this, do not listen to that voice. If 7 minutes is over, it's over. Go to the next question. Because what you'll find, if you do that strategy, there will be certain questions where you'll save time. Sometimes you go to question 2, because you saw question 2 before. It's so easy for you that instead of spending 30 minutes, you spend 20 minutes. Now you've saved 10 minutes. All of these savings, you can then go back and address all those lingering issues that were still there in other questions. So yeah, that's important. Do that. And I think if you do that, then you're well on your way to writing and finishing your papers.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is that sometimes you see when you're marking and you see students just leaving like a whole question, they didn't answer it and stuff. And you're like, shucks, if this student could have answered this, probably they could have got some part marks, you know, and then, you know, at least that would have boosted them in that sense. So I think, you know, students shouldn't leave any question blank, even if just write something, you know, write something 100%.
There. And Ben, on that also, you know, remember, if something is hard, it's hard for everyone, right? So the lecturers know this. They've put that question in deliberately. Now, it's just like in life. You get faced with challenges in life. Things become difficult. How do you approach that? Do you give up, or do you just say, you know what, I'm going to give it my effort? Give your effort, because even if you are wrong, as you've mentioned, there are part marks.
Yeah.
So you will end up even passing that question, even though you didn't know what was happening. Just like what I did. So don't do that. Yeah.
So now the pressure inside, the anxiety, because sometimes you see students like they are just having so much anxiety. Some they're having panic attacks. I mean, these things happen. I remember there was once a student that I saw who fainted, you know, during that 5 minutes reading time. I think the students opened the question paper and they realized that they don't know nothing and they just went blank. While there are those who, some they cross-night, and then immediately from cross-nighting, they come to the exam. And now I guess their mind is tired. They just have blackouts and everything like that. There are all sorts of this kind of mental things that are going on as far as exams are concerned. So you spoke about confidence earlier on. So how can students like solve this thing of anxiety, exam anxiety? Because most of the time I find that the students will write the exam or the test, and then after that, the results will come out, and then they would come and consult now on the paper. And they're like, I knew that. I really knew that. But I was scared, and for some reason, my mind couldn't think straight. But when I went back to my room and I sat down and my mind started to calm down, I realized that actually I knew this thing. I could answer this thing. I answered this before, but because I was scared, I was panicking, then I actually forgot everything. So meaning that anxiety, panic attacks are a problem because they can make you to forget stuff. How then do they deal with such things?
Good question, Ben. Good question. It's the age-old story, actually. How do you deal with anxiety? So what worked for me, right? I used to break the shackles. Sometimes you feel shackled. You feel like you are in prison, mental prison, when you are writing there, because you just go blank. You start panicking. You forget basic things. If that happens to you, stand up, go to the bathroom. There's no shame in you standing up, going to the bathroom, drink water, break the cycle, break the shackles. Because now you feel tired. The thing is, when you are in that situation, you feel trapped. You're like, there's no way out. I don't know what's going on. Then you're thinking, if I fail, I'll lose my funding. What will my parents say? This will happen. Just take a deep breath. Stand up, go to the bathroom, take a break, even if it means leaving the exam venue, temporarily. For some students that works. You leave the exam venue, like, why am I leaving leave the exam venue? You see other students having fun there, then you're like, what's up? You talk to them, then you get your mind relaxed out of this sort of exam sort of mindset for 5 minutes. 5 minutes won't hurt you. Then you come back because now you've relaxed your mind. You thought of something other than the exam. That's important, So I used to have periodic bathroom breaks. Sometimes you feel tired. You feel like, no, things are just not going in. Stand up, Others will tell you, they look at the floor, they look at the ceiling, they count. They count 1, 2, 3. Again, you are just distracting the mind, whatever works. Because the mind, it's so fragile sometimes that, you can feel like it's the end of the world. But as you start counting those ceiling things, you start realizing, no, man, I'm not dying. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. There's no issues. Then it can help you as well. So break the shackles. That's important. Leave, stand up, distract your mind, do something other than the exam momentarily, then come back. That will help. Definitely. Obviously, there are other topics. There are other strategies that, and I would encourage students to talk to, psychologists on campus about these things, because I know there are experts who deal with them, because sometimes there's anxiety caused by the exam itself. Then there could be anxiety caused by other things. I used to be a lecturer as well, Ben, A student comes to me and I realize that they are struggling not because of course, but because of things that are happening at home. That's when, you need to be mindful to say, deal with those issues. They are not minor. There's nothing more important in life. Yes, you need to get your degree, right? But trust me, this is not the be all and end all. There are so many things out there in life more important, like life, your family, health. Once you start putting those things into perspective, you start realizing, why am I stressing about a simple exam? There are so many things in this world that are way more important than me getting a degree. It's not to say that you won't get the degree, you will, but that will also reduce the pressure. You will not die. You will not die if you do not get this degree, or if you don't pass. There's a next year. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And in closing, what are some of the mistakes that you have seen students commit? I mean, speaking from a lecturer's perspective now, especially in exams, with regarding exams.
Mm. So the biggest mistakes that some people make, right, are just at the top of my mind now, right? Coming late to an exam
Sure.
is really, really, setting yourself up to do badly. Do not come late to an exam. If you know you're a person who struggles with this, get a friend, someone you trust that can actually force you to wake up. Yeah, so do that. Another mistake is that you leave the exam room, too early. Why are you leaving the exam room early? Because if you are leaving the exam room, there's a reason why that exam is supposed to last 2 hours.
Sure.
Now you are leaving after an hour. Shucks. What? There is no point in that. There's absolutely no point, right? Then another mistake that people make is that they really don't want to their own terms of answering everything, right? Answer. Don't be scared as well to ask for more paper. If for you it works to write one question in one book, do that. They will give you another answer booklet, right? Whatever helps you to be in a right frame when you're writing. Some people feeling anxious when they have to write everything in one book, then they're like, but now I have to make my handwriting small.
Yeah.
And now, whatever, works for you, do it. Do it. So, yeah. So that's my advice. Ben. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I've covered it. Yeah.
No, I think you've covered on a lot of this these things. But I think the nugget here is people should start, preparing for exams way before, because it alleviates the pressure, it boosts on your confidence, because I've done this, I've seen how it is. I have students who would walk into, like, come to me and way before, like maybe in the beginning of the year, and they would be like, hey, like, how are the exam structures for this course? What are the important things to know and everything like that? And you share with them to be like, for this course, this and this and this is important. And from there, they start simulating the exam. And I find that to be quite progressive, Yeah. Yeah, I think you...
Yes, just another, if I can just come in there, Ben. Also, mentorship and platforms like what you have are very important. Sometimes, we are faced with a challenge that there are a lot of missing information from our traditional schooling systems. No one teaches us these things. How do I learn? How do I cope in exams? We don't learn these things. But when you watch platforms like yours, you go and watch this YouTube channel, and you start getting this information. When you talk to students who've been successful, get a student a year above you, ask, how did you make it in this course? Get a mentor, get someone, and I realized if there's anything that I wish I had done more of when I was still a student, it's that, to consult more with those senior students, with those mentors. Get someone who is knowledgeable, who's worked, and listen to platforms like these ones. And that will really, really then, give you the necessary information for you to be able to not fall into these mistakes that we see every day. Yeah.
Definitely people will watch this and they'll go and get the distinctions that I'm quite sure about.
Yes.
No, as always, Mshunqane, thank you very much for your time and for gracing us here. And I think the pearls of wisdom that you have dropped here will actually go a long way in helping the audience that are going to be watching this.
Yeah, no, and thank you for inviting me, Ben. I'm always flattered when you invite me, because now I feel important.
No, I mean, you are.
But next at that time, I'm just a normal person.
No, next time I'll be trying to reach to you, and I have to go through a PA and all of these type of things. So I'm trying to utilize this time now while I can access you. Because I'm sure that time is coming, we'll be like, no, talk to my PA. Is the one that is, managing my diary or something like that. But thank you so much, Mshunqane.
No, thank you as well, Ben, and thank you to all the listeners. It was good to be here. Thanks.
Great.